Not so long ago, the German publication Bild shocked its readers with the information that the German armed forces are preparing for war with Russia, according to a very scary scenario. According to it, Russia will inflict a crushing defeat on Ukraine as early as 2024 and will launch first a hybrid and later an open invasion of Europe. This article was perceived by many as something expected by the Bundeswehr in the near future, as Ukraine is supposedly losing the war and its defeat is inevitable. The events described in Bild are a scenario for exercises and training of Bundeswehr units, within which they should act and improve their skills. But, it is the startling realism of the events that has frightened many, but how much of this realism corresponds to reality? To begin with, it is necessary to understand what the current Russian grouping in the war zone in Ukraine is capable of. As of today, it is 462,000 personnel, 2,800 tanks, 6,800 armored fighting vehicles, 4,600 barrel artillery and over 1,000 MLRS. At first glance this is a colossal potential, but in reality it is a monstrous shortage of Russian troops, which you can see in the table. The lack of standard equipment affects the ability of units to perform combat tasks. And we can clearly see this in recent times. During 2 years of full-scale war in Ukraine, the Russian army has lost tens of thousands of vehicles and its military-industrial complex is now struggling to compensate for the losses, unable to fully staff the units in the combat zone. Then what new tank divisions can we talk about? Another interesting point lies in the offensive capabilities of Russian troops in general. In 2022, Russian troops numbered 180,000, professionally and fully staffed units and had an initial effectiveness much higher than the current 460,000 personnel. Let me remind you that in 2022 a group of 40,000 personnel was attacking the capital of Ukraine. And now for more than 3 months, a 45,000 strong group cannot encircle the small Avdiivka. Or an even more striking example, 100,000 army in the direction of Lyman-Kupinsk axis, for the 6th month rests on the fortified area of the small village of Sinkivka. Hybrid threats to the Baltic states and Poland are also quite realistic, but without a clear, open form of invasion, because in 2025 the Russian army will be even more depleted. An open war against NATO would be suicidal for Russia in 2025. But in this scenario, here's what's interesting. According to the NATO scenario, after the capture of Ukraine in extremely short time, a 48-hour march of Russian troops from Belarus in the direction of Lithuania, with access to the Kaliningrad region of Russia in order to lay a land corridor should have been realized. Moscow did not believe that NATO would invoke Article 5 of collective security and start fighting for Lithuania before 48 hours, while the Russians would stall, explaining from the UN podium that this was not an invasion, but the need to create a humanitarian land corridor to the Kaliningrad region. But in Ukraine, things did not go as planned for the Russians, and they have been bogged down in fierce battles for the 2nd year in a row. Therefore, the scenario in general is not fictitious, but quite real. But there is one nuance in its successful realization for Russia. And that nuance is Ukraine.